I want you to think about the last time you volunteered for a campaign action. Not the last time you ran a campaign action, but the last time you showed up as a volunteer. I'm sure an organizer got up in front of the room and first thanked you profusely for being there before sharing a moving personal story. After an awkward practice round with the stranger standing next to you, they let you loose on the wide world, knocking doors, making calls, or sending rapid-fire text messages. At the end of the action, the organizer probably gathered you back together to ask the all-important question: when can I schedule you for your next shift? I'd guess that most of us not only experienced this, we've also been the earnest organizer desperately trying to get the volunteer to come back. Here's the thing though, do you remember the name of that organizer? Would that organizer recognize you if you passed them on the street? The tactics I just described were developed in the fast and dirty world of campaign politics, where the #1 goal is to achieve that elusive 50+1. In that world, we have to be efficient above all else, often to the sacrifice of other equally important organizing principles. But most of us are here today because we wanted to get out of campaign politics. Sure, we'll endorse a candidate or two, and none of us are above a well-organized phone bank. But we want to actually build a movement instead of just mobilize one. Project Game Changer helped me do just that. When Georgia Equality started this project, our average volunteer was a white suburban woman that may or may not be wearing a pink hat from the Women's March and probably wasn't even LGBT. They dedicated countless hours of their time to register voters during a grueling election season, and I will always be grateful for them. But at the end of the day, they weren't reflective of our membership. We knew we had to do better. Our goal with Project Game Changer was to build a volunteer program that invested in our membership instead of extracted from it. To do this, I used every tool in the book, including the 5-50-500 pyramid, the rule of halves, and the ramp of engagement. I held back tears when no one showed up to my event, and I argued with my mentor about asking for donations at the end of my action. I looked at spreadsheets and crosstabs in every action until I was cross-eyed. And after all that, I can honestly tell you that the most important skill in building a diverse volunteer team is caring. When I recently asked my team why they kept showing up during very real social collapse, one answer stuck with me. I have found that you allow your volunteers to grow within your organization. We are only limited by our desires. If a volunteer starts, you allow them to do it in a way that not only benefits the organization, but also benefits the individual. When I do a one-on-one, I ask the volunteer what their goals are, not only as a volunteer, but as a person. If there's a passion that I can't meet, I connect them to an organization or colleague that can. If we really want to change the game, we can't hoard volunteers. Our system makes us believe in the scarcity of resources, especially when it comes to volunteers. But that is false. Approach your volunteer pool as if it is endless, and it will be endless. It's also important to meet people where they are at. When someone says they can't make an action, campaign politics tells us to immediately pressure them for another time. At Georgia Equality, we tell them to take care of themselves and ask them if there's anything we can do to support them. This has been vital during the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent BLM uprising, and it has built real trust among our membership. We also ask our volunteers to bring their whole selves to an action. We always take time to check in with a question of the day. This could be silly or real or both. If they recently triumphed, we celebrate with them. If someone is struggling, we hold space for that and express love. Volunteers don't have to be pumped and excited all the time. I've had a volunteer show up to an action before just to hang out. She felt too raw to make calls that day, but she stayed on the Zoom anyway, and we chatted about her recent breakup. As organizers, we often feel the pressure to be Susie Sunshine. But in order to build trust in our volunteer program, you have to be honest and authentic yourself. If I'm stressed, I tell my volunteers that I'm a little crazy today, and I'm really grateful that they are there to help. If I'm angry or discouraged about a certain bill, I share that anger and then tell them how we're going to fight it. Lastly, Project Game Changer taught me to teach, grow, and give to our volunteers. Every time I run an action, I explain the strategy behind it. If we are making calls about a bill, I explain where the bill came from and why we are targeting a given committee. In my volunteer trainings, I show them the back end of every action and hustle, and I train my leaders on that software. I let my volunteers see and practice the organizational tools I'm using, and I explicitly state that my goal is to give them skills that they can translate to any part of the movement. I continually offer to be a professional reference and ask volunteers what they are seeking in order to advance themselves. Every volunteer in our program knows that our goal is to make the entire movement stronger, not just Georgia equality. When I look at my volunteer team now, I still see my lovely ladies in pink hats, but I also see my trans and non-binary siblings. I see Latinx leaders and beautiful Black creatives. I see people living with HIV that are 78 years old and Asian Americans that are 17. I see folks from the country and the heart of Atlanta. I see major donors and college students working side by side. I see passionate people that are much more than volunteers. I see a family of conspirators that are working every week to tear it down and build it back up again. And I could not be more grateful to be along for the ride.